Bishop T.D. Jakes built the Potter's House in Dallas into a church of roughly 30,000 members. Best-selling books, feature films, and sold-out arena conferences made him one of the most recognized voices in American Christianity. Then, across a single year, almost everything that Empire stood on was tested at once. A heart attack on his own stage, a public accusation he carried into federal court, and a quiet decision to hand his church to the next generation. The Potter's House opened its doors in Dallas, Texas in 1996 TD. Jakes started with a small group of families who had followed him from West Virginia, and within a few years the Dallas sanctuary was filling every single weekend. The church spread into campuses in Fort Worth, Frisco, Denver, and Los Angeles. Jakes himself grew into something far bigger than the pastor of one building. His book Woman Thou Art Loosed climbed the bestseller lists and became both a stage play and a feature film. He produced movies in Hollywood. He hosted festivals that drew tens of thousands, and he shared stages with politicians and celebrities. For a whole generation of churchgoers, the name T.D. Jakes carried the weight of a national institution. The money behind that empire never came from the Sunday offering plate alone. T.D. Jakes built a brand, and the brand sold. His books moved through major publishers and filled bookstore shelves across the country. His films opened in theaters. His mega-fest conferences packed arenas with paying attendees who came for days of preaching, music, and workshops. Behind all of it sat the T.D. Jakes Group, the company that managed the media, the licensing, and the partnerships. Critics of the prosperity movement argued for years that this kind of model blurred the line between feeding the flock and selling to it. If you want more stories like this one, the subscribe button keeps them coming to you. Long before any health scare or any lawsuit, T.D. Jakes drew public scrutiny over his personal wealth. Reporters and watchdog groups that track megachurch finances pointed for years to his reported homes, his lifestyle, and the scale of his media fortune. Some in his own audience asked the oldest question that hangs over the prosperity gospel. If the message is that faith brings wealth, then who exactly ends up wealthy? Jakes has consistently defended his money as the fruit of books, films, and businesses rather than the church offering. Even so, the distance between the bishop's life in Dallas and the lives of many people in his pews stayed a steady source of criticism. On a Sunday in late November of 2024, that steady world cracked open in front of everyone, T.D. Jakes was preaching at the Potter's House when his speech slowed and his body stiffened at the pulpit. He gripped the podium, he trembled, and the service stopped as he was helped off stage. The congregation watched their founder, a man in his late 60s, falter on the same Dallas stage where he had preached for decades. Jakes later told the Today Show that what happened that morning was a heart attack. A ministry built almost entirely around one man's voice had nearly lost that voice in public. The timing could not have been sharper. One day after that medical emergency, on November 25, 2024, Jakes filed a defamation lawsuit in a Pennsylvania federal court. The target was a Pittsburgh area pastor named Dwayne Youngblood. Weeks earlier, Youngblood had gone on a YouTube talk show called Larry Reed Live and claimed that Jakes had tried to groom and sexually assault him back in the 1980s when Youngblood was a teenager. Jakes denied every part of it. His attorneys called the account patently false, malicious, and defamatory. This next part matters because the audience deserves the full picture. These were unproven allegations, and Jakes was the one who went to court as the accuser rather than the accused. The man making the claims, Dwayne Youngblood, is a registered sex offender, convicted of sexual assault of a minor in 2008 and corruption of minors in 2014. Court filings also alleged that a letter from Youngblood's side had demanded $6 million to settle the matter quietly, which Jakes' lawyers described as an attempt at extortion. As the case wore on, Youngblood's attorney was sanctioned by the judge for submitting documents full of fake legal citations generated by artificial intelligence. In October of 2025, the two sides jointly agreed to dismiss the case. There is a hard truth buried in a story like this one. Even when the accuser is discredited and the lawsuit ends, the cloud over a public name does not fully lift. For months, the name T.D. Jakes appeared in headlines beside words no minister ever wants near his ministry. Social media spread rumors across the country faster than any courtroom could correct them. A brand built on a single man is fragile in exactly this way, because when the man is questioned, the entire structure feels the shake. If you ever sat under a pastor who lived far better than the people in the pews, tell me about it in the comments. For Jakes, the real damage was never a guilty verdict, because there was none. The damage was the reminder that an empire resting on one reputation can be rattled by one accusation, whether that accusation is true or not. Then came the decision that surprised many of his followers. On April 27, 2025, T.D. Jakes announced from his own pulpit that he would hand leadership of the Potter's House to his daughter Sarah Jakes Roberts and her husband Touré Roberts. He tied the choice directly to the heart attack. He told the Dallas congregation that he could not risk something happening to him and leaving them, in his own words, as sheep without a shepherd. This was not a forced exit from the church he founded. Jakes kept his role as chairman of the T.D. Jakes Group, and he announced plans for a new podcast with iHeartMedia. Sarah Jakes Roberts, already a best-selling author and preacher in her own right, stepped toward the center of the stage her father had held for nearly 30 years. So what did that 1 year in Dallas actually cost him? Not his church, which he handed down on his own terms. Not a court case, which ended with no finding against him. What the year took from TD. Jakes was something harder to measure on any balance sheet. It took the illusion that the man at the center would always be standing there. The November heart attack proved he was mortal. The Youngblood lawsuit proved his name could be pulled through a public storm whether or not the claims ever held up. The April succession proved that even the founder understood the empire needed a plan for the day he was gone. For a ministry built on one voice, that is a heavy year to carry. Every empire built on a single person eventually faces the same question. What happens when that person can no longer carry the weight? T.D. Jakes spent a lifetime making himself the foundation of the Potter's House, and in one hard year that foundation was tested by his own body, by a courtroom, and by the calendar. The building still stands in Dallas, the seats still fill on the weekend, and a new generation now holds the microphone. Whether the empire outlives the man who built it is the one story still being written. Subscribe, and we will keep following these stories until the whole picture is clear.